So hey grade 12, this is your favorite and adorable economics teacher in John Joye Economics. So guys, today we'll be dealing with a topic that you guys have been expecting and requesting in my comment section, which is new economic paradigm. So let's just dive into it. As we all know that the new economic paradigm is an essay type of question, so we need to break it piece by piece, right? So what is a new economic paradigm? A new economic paradigm, it is a new way of thinking whereby the state or the government discourages the policymakers from using the old policies, which is fiscal and monetary policy. Do you remember these policies that we dealt with in a previous lesson before we embark on a new economic paradigm? So those are old policies. Then the state encourages policymakers to use the new policies, which is demand side policy and supply side policy. So let's just start with the demand side policy. Remember, these policies are only used when we want to put the economy in a right direction or when we want to boost the growth of the economy. So we use these policies. So in this case, the government discourages the policymakers from using the old ones and encourages them to use the new ones, which is demand side policy and supply side policy. That's the whole concept of the new economic paradigm, right? So so let's start with the demand side policy. The demand side policy, this is the policy that is used to stimulate. The word stimulated means increase, right? So this is the policy that is used to increase or to stimulate the aggregate demand. So the aim of this policy is to increase the consumer spending, or is to increase people who are demanding goods and services. Does it make sense? Right. So as we know, with this policy, its aim is to stimulate the aggregate demand. So we will have to analyze the graph, how does the graph works. And let me tell you a secret. The moment you note how the graph is being created or how the graph works, it will help you to write the essay, because I just told you guys this is an essay type of question. This graph will help you to come up with the subheadings that need to be discussed in this section. Does it make sense? So you need to know what graph iyonke izosebenza kanjani. So in this case, we need to have our vertical axis and our horizontal axis. As we see, our vertical axis represents the prices and our horizontal axis represents what? The output, or the GDP, or the quantity, the number of goods produced, right? And we have our market forces, which is aggregate supply and aggregate demand, and our point of equilibrium, and our market price, which is 20, and our original output or quantity, which is 30. Right. So let's implement this policy, which is called the demand side policy, and see how it works. So the aim of this policy is to increase the aggregate demand, right? So it's to stimulate the aggregate demand. So display kanjani get this thing in a graph. So we need to see the AD shifting, right? So if ever we are increasing the aggregate demand, our aggregate demand graph or curve, the AD curve will shift to the right hand side, as we've seen here, moving from AD to AD1. This is a new shift. It shows which the aggregate demand has increased, right? So as the aggregate demand increases, we will now have our new equilibrium point, which will be identified as E1, and the graph will be identified as AD1, right? So we'll be having our new market price, which is 40, and we will be having our new output or new quantity, which is 45, right? So let's analyze this graph. As the AD has shifted to the right hand side and increased, what will happen to the level of prices? As I've told you guys, for you to be able to come up with the subheadings when you are writing this essay, you need to master the whole entire graph. So this graph would give you the subheadings that you need to discuss in this section, right? So let me show you how does this work. Okay, so you will see the shift in prices. So the prices has increased from 20 to 40 rands, right? So what do you call an increase in the prices of goods and services? So the increase in the prices of goods and services, it is called what? An inflation. inflation. Right, so you need to know what, oh, this is the first subheading that I need to deal with in this section. So now we have the inflation. So what is an inflation? An inflation, it is a general increase in the prices of goods and services over time. Right, so what causes the inflation? The inflation, it is caused by an increase in aggregate demand. As we saw the aggregate demand shifting to the right hand side, then the effect where the prices increase from 22 to 40 rand. So the inflation, it is caused by an increase in aggregate what? Demand. So this results into goods becoming what? More expensive. Right, so when goods are more expensive, therefore the unfortunate population will not be able to afford some goods. Does that make sense? Right, so that's how you write this essay. So let's continue, moving to the next sub heading, which is unemployment. So how did we get unemployment? Let's just analyze the shifting or the effect that was created when the AD shifts to AD1. So let's look at the output now. It moves from 30 to 31. It shows that the level of GDP has increased, or the level of goods and services that are produced has increased from 30 to 45. Right? So what does this tell you indirectly when it comes to employment and unemployment? The increase in the quantity, or the increase in the level of output, it will indirectly inform you that the level of employment has increased. Therefore, if the level of employment has increased, it will tell you that the level of unemployment has decreased. So that's how we came up with the term which is called unemployment. We looked at the effect of the output. All right. So what is the unemployment? The unemployment, it is a part of a population that is not economically what? Active. Right. So what causes the unemployment? It is caused by the lack of education, lack of skills, and lack of training, together with the lack of literacy. Right. So this results into less output. So that's how we came up with this term unemployment, because we saw that the output has increased, which shows that the level of employment has increased, which will indirectly tell you that the level of unemployment has decreased. So this results into what? Into less output if more people are not working. Right? So if the inflation rate increases, it shows that the unemployment rate has decreased, which will be easily illustrated by drawing the Phillips curve. So what is a Phillips curve? So a Phillips curve, it is a graphical illustration that shows a relationship between the unemployment and the inflation. So for you to understand this bullet that is explained here, you need to analyze the Phillips curve. You need to know what is a Phillips curve. So in Phillips curve, I've just told you what's a Phillips curve. It is a graph, or it is a graphical illustration that shows a relationship between unemployment and inflation. So